Time now for Truth or Fake. I'm joined for that by James Creedon. Hello, James.
Hi, Tom.
Now, you've been looking at a story concerning the return of cultural artefacts from Europe to Africa. Tell us more.
All right, so just by way of context, first of all, over the last couple of years, well, actually, it began back in the 1970s as a UNESCO sort of led initiative, Return and Restitution Intergovernmental Council, and quotes such as this: "The men and women of these countries have the right to recover their cultural assets, which are part of their being." That's the quote of a former Director General. Emmanuel Macron took that effort very much to heart, and indeed, towards the end of last year at Quai Branly Museum, 26 artefacts were known as the Benin bronzes were returned to the country of origin, and indeed it kind of set in motion a certain momentum for more of that to follow, if you like. I suppose the concern being that a lot of museums in European countries might have considerably fewer artefacts. Also the concern in some African countries being whether or not the right facilities and infrastructures can be put in place to protect these cultural artefacts. So it's a sort of a balancing act and a slow dance, if you like, but going in the direction of a lot of these artefacts being returned to their countries of origin.
Okay,
That's just by way of context.
Well, I'm told the vaults and the cellars of all these museums are full of so much stuff they haven't even got room to display it all. So I think they can give some of it back, can't they? Now, you've been looking at claims online suggesting that Belgium actually returned fake traditional masks to the Democratic Republic of Congo, inferring that they've kept the originals. Is there any truth
Which
to
would be a
this?
pretty bold move. The short answer is no, this is not accurate. And what happened was, on the 8th of June, there was a visit by the Belgian royal family. During this visit, a mask, a traditional ceremonial mask called a kaku ungu. These were masks for initiation rites or healing ceremonies. Now, this mask had actually been acquired legally in the 1950s by an art dealer. It was in a museum in Belgium, and it was then lent for an indefinite time period by this royal delegation visiting DR Congo. And in any case, there was a lot of buzz around this, various photos and images floating around social media, and indeed lots and lots of shares of this particular I suppose, mashup of images, if you like. Now, what that image is claiming, as many tweets did, is that this was not the original mask. It was some sort of copy, and that, what would you say, a fake mask had been returned to DR Congo. Bearing in mind, DR Congo was a Belgian colony from the 19th century up to the 1960s. It was a particularly brutal experience. There's a lot of mistrust, I think you could say, amongst Congolese of Belgium generally. So that would probably explain why these sort of false claims were circulating on social media. In any case, the very simple answer is these are two different masks. Our journalists spoke to Julien Volpert, who is a curator at the Royal Museum of Central Africa in Belgium, and he said, look, we have a record of the mask that was returned. We have it catalogued. It was acquired in 1954. The other mask here on the left, we don't have any record of that, but there were dozens of these kinds of masks that are either in museums or in private collections. So quite simply, this is a false claim, and it's nothing. It's not. Which would be a pretty bold and improbable move, because a lot of this, the return of cultural artifacts, is very much a carefully choreographed and advanced sort of process, and overseen by museums and curators and whatnot. So it's almost impossible to imagine that a fake would be, because it would be detected immediately in any case on the other end. So fake news.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for debunking that myth. James Creedon with today's edition of Truth or Fake. Thank you very much indeed.